we came over a hill approximately 10 miles outside of the main base, we witnessed a large, flat, black mass hovering above the desert floor. It was silent, triangular, approximately 300 feet in length, and it hung in the air roughly 150 to 200 feet above.
It had some type of crystal, looked like a crystal display screen on top of it. And while I was looking at it, I saw inky black symbols start to appear above it. We got to see this stuff. They talked a little bit about, the recovery from a crash, and they talked about it pretty nonchalantly, like it was a Tuesday afternoon, and we were brought out of there and had a quick debrief and that.
And eventually I was approached, evaluated, tested, and eventually recruited by a military contractor to work as a psionic asset. The objective was to use psionic assets to attract UAP for technical exploitation, target acquisition, and downing of non-human craft, to include recovery and reverse engineering of the technology.
Welcome to the 25th anniversary of disclosure. In this video, you are about to hear firsthand testimony from whistleblowers, real accounts from the very people at the center of it all, along with much more. This is part 1 of a multi-part series. If you would like to see the extended version, including my personal thoughts and conversations that took place after the event, that will be available to subscription members. Make sure to follow and subscribe, because this was only the beginning. The second event was even longer and far more in depth, and I was one of only a few people who recorded it. If you are interested in conspiracies, anomalies, mysteries, and the paranormal, you are in the right place. Now, let's get into the event.
The Senate Intelligence Committee. There are many, many fine people who are trying to get to the bottom of this. The problem is, and this I want to be clear about, there are two governments. There's the government you know about, we elect and appoint. There's a shadow or secret government that is actually running this. And that is not a conspiracy theory, it's a fact, we can prove it. And what that means is, routinely, presidents, SecDefs, and others, they will get the most superficial information on this, whereas the code word level special access projects, top secret, special compartment information, is something they never can penetrate because it's operating outside the constitutional chain of command. I cannot say that more clearly. And that was the conclusion we reached in 1993. Not because I was Googling conspiracy theories, but because I met and briefed the director of the CIA, who told me point blank that he and the president were denied access. Okay, this is a serious problem for our country and for the world. So when the most important issue in the history of the human species comes up, and you have the rule of law completely subverted by an unelected, unsanctioned group, we can have our phones off, please. Then I think this is a real problem, is to get people to understand who are in high office that you're not going to get access unless you go do a workaround. And so what I've been trying to do is to be a bridge between, right now, over 760 top secret whistleblowers, as any kind of democracy. I mean, otherwise it makes a mockery of the rule of law. Okay, so that's the biggest problem, that people have wrapping their minds around that. So what I would want to do, if I were the president, would to send out a special team of folks, this is happening, who do penetrate these covert programs based on the intelligence we have provided. And that is happening. So what you're going to see coming out from the White House and the Secretary of War and others is the tip of an iceberg that they now know is true. And it's probably a trial balloon, and it's probably testing of the waters and the markets and the public. But there's a lot more that they already have. I know what it is, but I'm not going to portray any confidence on that. I'll simply say that they're in the right direction, and they have acquired material, let's say physical material and proof, and it's a lot more than lights in the skies that they released today, much more. Now, what I'm here to do today, which I didn't know I was going to be doing this after the fact, we were going to do this kind of preemptively, as we were talking about at dinner last night, what was released today, probably everybody here, it's all over the news. It is an infinitesimal amount of the information that I know that is in some quarters within the Director of National Intelligence Office and other places. So I think that we have to be patient. I think they're putting their toe in the water and see that if their toe gets bitten off, right? You know, how about the sharks that are out there? And this brings up another question. Is the Senate is considering a bill to sort of ramp up whistleblower protection. That needs to happen. It needs to include federal witness protection and marshals. The whistleblowers up here today will share you some amazing material and information. But keep in mind, it's a tiny fraction of what we have, all right? Because these folks were at facilities when they saw events happen. They were not running the programs. They were not in the command structure running the programs. We have those people, including CEOs of Fortune 50 companies and everything else, but they are afraid for their lives. And this is, I'm not trying to be melodramatic, they are. And we have to protect them. So the government of the United States needs to step up to the plate and do the right thing and muscle up the security around these high-value whistleblowers, of which we have dozens. Now, there are others, we call them hostile witnesses, that are also on the list that I've given to the White House and to certain members of Congress to be subpoenaed. So far, there has not been a hearing where they have activated the subpoena process. That needs to happen immediately now that this is coming out from the administration. And we have a very extensive list of names of people who need to be subpoenaed and put under oath. And if they lie, they go to prison, right? That's it. So I just wanted to, with that breaking news today, wanted to sort of frame things for us. And then we're going to show a little video just as a trip down memory lane. If you guys can show that, you know. This is from
Technologies connected to UFO and extraterrestrial vehicles, if declassified and used for peaceful energy generation and propulsion, would solve the looming energy crisis definitively.
My name is John Callahan. I'm a retired FAA employee. I was the division manager for the Accidents Evaluation and Investigation Division in DC. About 2 years before I retired, I received a call from Alaska region where the region wanted to know what to tell the media. When I questioned, tell the media what, he says about the UFO. Now, I've told this story many times, and I get sometimes funny looks from people. I have with me the voice tapes of the controllers that were involved, the FAA original tapes. See, after we handed this stuff off to the president's staff, the FAA didn't know what to do with it. We don't separate UFOs from real traffic, so it's not our problem, okay? I have a copy of the original of the video that we took.
Good morning. My name is Dwayne Arneson. I served 26 years as a communication electronics officer in the U.S. Air Force, all over the world, including Vietnam. I was lucky to be selected to be commander of 3 different units in the Air Force. I held the top secret SCI TK clearance, and for those who know, it is slightly above top secret, is that a UFO was seen near the missile silos and the missiles were deactivated.
Good morning. My name is Carl Wolf, and I was a precision electronics photographic repairman with a top secret crypto clearance in the United States Air Force. I was stationed at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. By the way, we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon. And then he proceeded to put photographs down in front of me, and clearly in these photographs were structures, mushroom-shaped buildings, spherical buildings, and towers.
Hi, my name is George Filer III. I'm a retired intelligence officer and flyer with almost 5,000 hours. Senior Master Sergeant in charge said that there had been UFOs in the pattern all night. They're on radar. the tower had seen them, they got in aircraft reports and so on, and that one had landed or crashed at Fort Dix. Fort Dix and McGuire are right together. And this is kind of like the Roswell of the East. But in any case, an alien had come off the craft and had been shot by a military policeman, and apparently was wounded and was heading for McGuire.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Clifford Stone. I was Sergeant First Class, United States Army. I had a secret clearance with nuclear surety. What I'm referring to here is that I was involved in situations where we actually did recoveries of crashed saucers, for lack of a better term, debris thereof. There were bodies that were involved with some of these crashes, also some were alive.
My name is Mark McCandlish, and for the last 21 years, I have worked as a conceptual artist for a variety of defense contractors. In 1988, in November, a college buddy of mine, an associate by the name of Brad Sorensen, informed me that he had personally witnessed 3 flying saucers at a very large hangar at Norton Air Force Base during the course of an air show that was held on Saturday, November 12, 1988. These discs were hovering off the floor without any visible means of support. They were referred to as alien reproduction vehicles, also nicknamed the flux liner because they used high voltage electricity.
And we have to prevent the weaponization of space because there's a lie they just lit in another enemy. Only this time we're going to protect our satellites. In other words, we have to have some reason to spend these trillions to waste these dollars on a space-based weapon system, and they're all lies.
Okay, so 20 people stood up and did this 25 years ago. Most of them have passed away. There are a couple still living. Ms. Rosen, who you just saw, was the spokesperson for Werner von Braun, who invented the first rocket for Germany in World War II, and then became foundational for our aerospace programs, as you know, under Operation Paperclip, where they were, key German genius level engineers and scientists were brought into the United States rather than being executed by us at the end of World War II. And Werner von Braun was one of them. So she became his confidant last 5 years of his life, and he warned that they would and have been hoaxing a threat that is alien. So next.
A shadowy government with its own Air Force, its own Navy, its own fundraising mechanism, and the ability to pursue its own ideas of the national interest, free from all checks and balances, and free from the law itself.
Think about what he said back in the 80s. Now, there was a young student who became a lawyer who worked with Senator Inouye, who later had a conversation. He says, yes, he had seen the 2001 National Press Club event. Every word of it was true. And the people running it as part of this shadow, illegal, unconstitutional government that he was referring to here. Very important for people to understand that. There are people who do know this, but there's great intimidation to keep their mouths shut. So Senator Inouye never went forward with his knowledge about the UFO issue. I think if he was alive today with what's happening out of the White House and Congress, he would. But he's no longer with us. So one thing I want to say, this is foundational in this first few minutes. This is what nobody understands in the media and Congress, except for 1 or 2 people. We're talking about 3 different things going on. There are non-human extraterrestrial vehicles, bodies, civilizations. They are completely non-hostile. If they were hostile, we'd be gone when we detonate the first atomic bomb. Number 2, the majority of all objects that are seen, photographed, chased by our military, our legal military, are man-made craft coming out of the Lockheed Skunk Works, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, SAIC, Booz Allen Hamilton, and a number of other prime contractors, the list of which we have and have been given to law enforcement and to the executive branch in the Congress. The other category, and that's completely confused, is what are called interdimensional intelligences. Now, let me unpack this for just a minute. I know because this has caused Congresswoman Luna, the Vice President, to make some statements that are not true. But this gets into more than we can get into today, dealing with the physics of interstellar travel. But let me just say that if you go beyond the speed of light, you're not doing it in a linear fashion. You are creating an electromagnetic field where that craft and everyone in it drops out of linear space-time into another dimension, traverses through that dimension to another point, and it's called quantum entanglement, where, you know, the spooky effect Einstein talked about, where the same particle be in two places at once. So this contangled universe where every point in space-time is connected to every other point in space-time. And that is how they're doing it. But when they're in transit, or if they are shifted, they could be in the atmosphere and shifted out of 3D, they're in another dimension. But they don't originate from that dimension, they're transiting it. Does this make sense? So I call them trans-dimensional interstellar civilizations. Now, because some of the phenomena dealing with ghosts, goblins, demons, angels are similar, theologists and religious people have conflated them, because phenomenologically, from an observation empirical point of view, there is some similarity overlap, because the ET technologies cross into these other dimensions operationally, scientifically. Is this clear? I'm trying to be really clear on this without getting into arcane physics. So I think this is why what's happened in the last few months is very disconcerting. Because there are people who are working with the intelligence community, who are in the White House, the Pentagon, CIA, Congress, who are gaslighting and misleading our leaders, and I will be blunt about it. It cannot be allowed to continue, and those people need to be careful what they say, because this is all going to come out now, and if it comes out incorrectly, it'll be 1,000 times worse than COVID. If it comes out properly, it'll be a new civilization and one of the most unifying, beautiful experiences for all of humanity in recorded history. That is how stark the difference is, and this was in the briefing for the president right after he got elected. So we have to be very careful. Next. Now, if you really want to know what's going on this subject, this is where you need to go. The Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive. The URL is dpiarchive.com. Everything is in there. We spent about $500,000 digitizing everything I've collected for 35 years. And it's available to all of you for free. And so you can go through that and see. You will see that this archive has significantly more information than anything that you will see anywhere else in the world, including the testimony of over 115 top secret whistleblowers. It's in there, their full testimony, their credentials. Now, it's so much, it's almost what Dr. J. Allen Hynek of the Project Blue Book director said, it's an embarrassment of riches. We have so much, but I would recommend for the media and those of you interested in this matter to do a deep dive into this archive. Next. Now, this was released this morning. It's over the moon, and there's a triangular formation of 3 bluish lights. We have thousands of images way better than this, but this is the best of what was released today. Next. And then in contrast, you'll see the one in the upper left. That's from one of our CE5 contact teams. We'll get into this psionic mind consciousness technology interface program that I started in 1990. That was a result of that one. And you can see the middle one is a non-human intelligence ET from another star system that appeared at one of our events, and he was 2 people away from me. The other cook popped in, and David Marconi, who wrote Enemy of the State, took this photo. I said, David, there's a guy standing right here. Boom, there it was. And they had archives brought in, and this is a dissection of an ET on a slab from the 1920s. It's been dated to the 1920s. This is one of the pictures in the briefing document for the president. I don't often show it, It's a big gruesome, there's a towel over the head. The archive is filled with this sort of information. And they came from a woman whose grandmother was at the Trinity program and made the atomic bomb program, and they got moved to Roswell because that was the only atomic bomb in the world when that craft crashed in the Roswell area in 1940s. So that when she died, her granddaughter was going through some old books in the attic, and this photo fell out. And apparently there was someone who gave her the photo from the photo lab there in Roswell in the 40s. This is a Northrop Grumman or Raytheon device. It's a electrogravitic anti-gravity over us at Joshua Tree National Park when I was with Demi Lovato. And we had set up a contact protocol out there. This is way more interesting than I think the best photo of what was released today, don't you? Anyway, next. So let's play this. Here's something that was released by Congressman Burleson. I had seen it before he released it. And you'll see a sphere intercepted by a Hellfire missile. Now, this event was friendly fire. It was not an extraterrestrial device. That sphere was us. Now, the operators, here is a real problem. The first time I briefed the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the head of the intelligence agency, they were not read into this. And I said, your military aircraft and systems are often intercepting and having close calls, not with alien vehicles, but with clandestine, covertly made and funded, black budget aircraft made by our aerospace giants, but off book and without the knowledge of Congress or the president. And therefore, very few people are read into. So you may have a top secret clearance, and in Washington, that and a couple bucks gets you on the metro. But frankly, but it doesn't give you access to those special access projects that are code word compartmented dealing with this. So much of this is centered in corporate, but there are government people, agencies that do have this information, but they often are under orders not to share it with the elected leaders or the cabinet. So this is a dysfunction that has to get corrected, and I know it's being looked at. Next. In contradistinction, this is an actual extraterrestrial sphere, unlike the other one that was man-made. And this is in Buga, Colombia. You're going to hear a lot about this towards the end of our press conference. It's very important. It is with Buga, Colombia. This is what Jaime Mason now has possession of. This object came in and it landed. It got too close to a power line and shorted out, and it's in our possession, his possession. And we have been doing the studies on it, but that is an extraterrestrial technology. It's the first time in history that one has landed and been acquired and then not subsequently been grabbed by a SWAT team of some type. So this is a huge historic opportunity, and it is real. Even though most people on the internet can't believe it, it is. Just like no one can go down to East Hardware and buy a nuclear bomb or a nuclear trigger, right? But you have to disclose they exist because they've been used illegally and abusively against the population for decades, since the late 1950s. Next. Now, this is something I want to touch on just very carefully. I know the media here is going to go, oof. All I'm going to say is that one of the most senior people in national security for prior administration, and I met extensively for about 3 hours last year. He has the audio of the video of some files from Epstein Island of key people in our intelligence and national security system. When key, I mean very senior, that are compromised and are being actively blackmailed to slow down or distort disclosure. I'm going to say that. I'm going to let that sit. I will say to the Department of Justice, if you want to inquire into this and pursue it, because we're talking blackmailing officials at the highest level that is interfering with the function of government. So that is what Epstein Island was. It was a honeypot set up by the intelligence community to entrap certain high-value targets and then control them through that process of blackmail. This happens all the time. Everyone knows J. Edgar Hoover had huge files on everyone, every mistress for every president. That's how he stayed in office. But this is serious. This is something that can really affect the truth of what gets to the president and Congress, or whether things are allowed to come out. So this is something that has to get nipped in the bud. I won't say who the officials are who are compromised, where I got the information, or who's doing the blackmailing, but I know the two senior former government officials doing the blackmail. I know both of them. All right, next.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51.
Area 51. There's no underground facility, unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
Okay, so you all know he had to walk that back, but what he said there was true. And it wasn't because, it was because we had put together, and I had provided to John Podesta, who had put together the cabinet and had been chief of staff of Clinton, a huge file, a thing like this one. And so he knew it was real, but he never through the chain of command got access, so he wasn't lying. Now Trump later castigated him on Air Force One. He was flying and he said he shouldn't have said that, and that's top secret. And that prompted him to then issue this statement, which I won't read to you, you know it, where the president ordered the Secretary of War Hegstead to start releasing files and to do it as soon as possible. And of course it says any and all information connected to these highly complex but extremely interesting and important matters. So what happened today was just, again, a troubling first little bit. Next. And
You're gonna release all the UFO files. We're working on it.
We saw aliens.
You know me.
We saw aliens.gov. I don't think they're aliens. I think they're demons anyway, but that's a long discussion.
All right. I just want to address this for just a moment. I had to go, Benny Johnson is a big podcaster and friends with the vice president. And when this happened, my phone blew up from all over the world. And of course, there are certain elements of like the state group at the Catholic Church and other groups that have been pushing the aliens or demons agenda for 50 years. He is a Catholic. I respect people's faith, but you cannot confuse an extraterrestrial advanced civilization with a demon or an angel. It's very dangerous for somebody one heartbeat away from the Oval Office to speak this way, because this is how we end up in World War III, that's interplanetary, which is what the CIA has been wanting for decades. They keep the fires burning, they provoke disinformation, they brainwash people with nonsense, and that statement has got to be retracted. Now, let me explain how this has evolved. I was on the show, the Benny Johnson show, a week later, and I laid this out. One of the things that the vice president said, and this is a common mistake. You see this little thing? What it is? Smartphone. So what? But if you took this back and showed Thomas Jefferson, my farm out in the country near his house, and you showed him this, it would be supernatural. So what the full clip was, he said, because these are behaving supernaturally, they're demons. But remember, everything we're using in this room right now would be supernatural to someone 500 years ago. An airplane would be impossible, defying gravity, right? If you were to show a video on a cell phone to people in Salem, Massachusetts, you'd be burned at the stake as a witch. Okay? This is not okay to say something like that. This is a serious national security matter. It cannot devolve into the lunatic fringe of those kinds of theologies. Because what are we going to go? We would gallop pell-mell back to the 7th century? We may as well be the Ayatollahs in Iran. This can't happen. I'm sorry to come on strong on this, but this is very dangerous stuff. Now, is there a theological and spiritual aspect of this? Yes. Because the whole universe is a conscious quantum hologram. The whole creation. I believe in God. I believe in the prophets. I don't have a problem with that. But there are different phenomena. And one of the things I want to leave you with on this, because I could go on all day long, we have other things to do. When I was at the Vatican with Pope John Paul, senior theologian, Monsignor Balducci, I was in his apartments overlooking St. Peter's. And this issue came up then. This would have been in 1995, 6, 7. And he was himself a demonologist. His specialty were demons, believe it or not, at the Vatican. And he laughed when this came up. He said, look, neither angels nor demons need flying saucers. He put it so simply, and it's true. So people need to be careful. You're going to hear so many theories about what this is. And this interdimensional demon part of it is a deliberate gaslighting by senior people in these covert illegal programs to prey on the religious beliefs of certain people. And unfortunately, that's what's happened to the vice president and Tucker Carlson and a few other people. This needs to get corrected. Congressman Luna has also been deceived this way. I know the people who have targeted her with these wrong ideas. And a couple of them have been turned over to law enforcement for investigation for various crimes and felonies. But I think this is why we have to be careful what words we use matter right now as this comes in. Okay, next, the screen went blank. My screen's blank. So I just want to quit. This has been in the media in the last month a great deal. General McCaslin, there you go. He was a Wright-Patterson Air Force Base general that dealt with a lot of very dark projects related to this. He is missing. The guys I've worked with who are senior military operators from various walks of life, and I feel that, and I can't prove this, that the noose was getting close because the people I have been handing over information to in law enforcement and military and national security circles, we have been naming names that I'm not naming here today, but very explicit names, up to and including people who have ordered what are called wet works, targeted assassinations of leakers and whistleblowers and things like that. And in the aerospace corporations, we know who some of those people are. Their names have been handed over and are being actively investigated for serious crimes, including murder, extrajudicial killings. So in this case, I think General McCaslin, in all likelihood, vanished himself as opposed to being taken. Now, there are scientists missing. Amy Estridge, for example, had worked on and developed an electrogravitic anti-gravity, if you will, type system. And if you look at our documentary, The Lost Century, that we released 3 years ago, we document, since for over 100 years, is what I call a Lost Century, very brilliant scientists who have been killed or have been imprisoned or set up in scams to take out their inventions. This is why we're still using oil, gas, coal, nuclear, wind, solar, plug-in electric cars. If we had the technologies running a UFO, even the ones made by my uncle's old company, Northrop Grumman, you would never have, it would be an energy source coming from what's called the zero-point energy field around us. So these guys understand this, right? And so General McCaslin, though, was very much involved in some dark projects. We know he was the man who intercepted this rock star that I had briefed when he was a young kid, named Tom DeLong, and handed him off to Luis Elizondo, where he was then chewed up and spindled and mutilated and spit out. And McCaslin has been an operative on this for a long time, so I think he may have just vanished himself. Okay, now I can't prove it, but that's our working theory as at this point, and where he is, nobody knows. Next. I just want to show you from the archive. If you go on the dpiarchive.com, you will see this map. These are the black sites that we've been able to document from whistleblowers, nearly 1,000 whistleblowers I've debriefed over the last 35 years. And the ones that are key will be in the next slide, and you'll see this summary. Now, this is what I've asked the administration and members of Congress to focus on, are these top tier ones, right? And the top tier ones, Dugway, Edwards, Wright-Pat, not Nellis Air Force Base per se, but the Northern Nevada test area. Area 51 is not particularly relevant, by the way. It's an old site, and the real actions moved up to Area 54, 53, some in 52. Those are grids on a map, okay? So that's what you want to realize is that we update this map as we get new intelligence from whistleblowers and sources who are defecting, and this is your guide. Now, the corporations involved, you can see those. I'm not going to read them all. We don't have time. But this is in the briefing document. And by the way, there is this document, the redacted version of it you can get from us. You can just order it. And it has everything but the sensitive, some of the tactical information and then some of the sensitive names that have to be redacted for the public, okay, or out. But everything else is in there. This is in there. So I would suggest if you really want to know where these assets are and where the underground bases are, you go through that. Now, we have been able to map down to the entry points of many of these places, both at the Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah, Edwards Complex, the Lockheed Skunk Works, Northrop Grumman Test Range, the facilities out at Tonopah and going up to Groom Lake and Pahoo Mesa. We know where those places are. We know where the assets are, and most of them are underground, and they're very large underground facilities. I'm told the one that's in the Utah complex associated with Dugway is about 1,300 square miles under the earth. That big, huge, massive. And it's been built by contractors like Bechtel Corporation using a nuclear-powered tunneling device. And we have the schematic for that device that's in our archive that was developed in the 1960s. So when they started building these vast underground complexes, that's what they used. It was a nuclear-powered tunneling device. Next. This I just went through. That's the cover page. Next. So here are the actions that we've been recommending. Criminal investigation focused on illegal covert government and corporate programs related to UFOs. That is happening. This is what was in his recommended actions provided to him in November to the president. Both executive and congressional actions are needed to authorize a law enforcement search and seizure of these illegal operations and their assets. This has also begun. These assets include recovered extraterrestrial vehicles, man-made UFOs and related technologies, extraterrestrial biological entities, even or living ETs that are captive and still living. We have people who know where those are, and man-made alien-appearing bodies and robots that are used in false flag operations, such as abductions. Almost all the mythology about the UFO subject is a psychological warfare operation that's run mainly out of the PSYOPs division of the CIA. A key objective would be immediate cessation of the targeting and capture of extraterrestrial vehicles and their occupants, which is now ongoing. Now, I understand there is an attempt to stand down those actions, because if they don't get stood down, it's very dangerous. It's been going on since the 40s with directional energy weapons. 3, both executive orders and legislation should support the above recommendations and include a provision for immunity for those currently or previously in these illegal programs who are willing to cooperate fully. What am I saying here? We have many high-value assets that have been involved in criminal activities, and they need a letter of non-prosecution from the Department of Justice, an Attorney General, to protect them from prosecution so they can cooperate, and they want to cooperate. So this is how you make a deal, okay? The art of the deal. Here's the cosmic deal, all right, Washington. We need to extend letters of immunity to some of these people. Next. A diplomatic initiative should be immediately started to make peaceful contact with any and all ET civilizations visiting the Earth. They should be viewed as a permanent national and international diplomatic mission, the goal of which is to full rapprochement with ET civilizations. This has never happened. It started to happen in the early 50s with Eisenhower. It got shut down. And we need to start that back up. Now, our CE5, or Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind Contact Initiative, has been doing that formally for 36 years. But it's an ad hoc public diplomatic group. It's like citizens diplomacy. You get the app, CE5 Contact, on your app stores. But this needs to go official now. So we're not alone in the universe. It's being acknowledged. Now we need to get serious about not just the United States, but other countries creating a safe space and a protocol for contacting these civilizations rather than just tracking them and blowing them out of the sky, which is what's been going on since the 40s. An executive order is needed to immediately cease the targeting and downing of NHI craft and any other acts of hostility towards them. An international agreement removing and banning all weapons from space and the use of advanced reverse engineered technologies as weapons should be negotiated with enforcement capabilities in place globally. Why do I say this? Because OCONUS, outside continental United States, is where a great many of our assets are that are being run by a sort of a global covert group, and you have to stand them down globally. It's not enough to stand them down just in the continental United States, right? So the organization running these secret programs, think of it as a global hybrid corporate governmental entity that operates with alacrity regardless of your geopolitical borders between Canada, US, Russia, China, whatever. And this is why these objects are seen in Russia and China that are man-made ones. And it is a big problem. So when I've met with people who are tactical operators at a very high level, the big discussion is how do you get that under control? And get it under control so that we can have a peaceful world, but also make peaceful outreach to these visitors who mean us no harm. They're here to help and understand us and contain us if we go too far crazy, right? And I'm talking about using technologies that we have that are way beyond the thermonuclear weapon level that we have and have been using against them. So the aggressors here, ironically, are the humans. Forget all the Hollywood movies and the UFO mythologies. If they were aggressive, we'd be gone. Okay, next. So now I'd like to introduce Roderick Castle. He's a